people at Truck Stop done teamed up with the boy Mark the Mentor. Are you ready to take your trucking business to the next level? With Truck Stop Pro, you get access to the best load board in the game, giving you the tools to find higher paying loads and streamline your operation. And right now, you can try the Pro plan free for 30 days, a $159 value. Click the link in the description to claim your free Pro plan and start making smarter moves for your trucking business today.
Warning: the following content contains strong language and may not be suitable for children. This content is primarily for adults, as this is a trucking channel and truckers have filthy mouths. Please don't tweak if I say. Viewer discretion is advised.
Sweet.
Come on in. Make sure you guys hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on all post notifications. How is everybody doing this evening? Late edition of a live stream. I know today is Monday, so you guys probably were expecting the Wise Men podcast, but we're going to put that on pause for a minute, and then we'll come back to that. This is a very important week for a lot of truckers. Happens every year, DOT Blitz week. So we're going to talk about this today. We do have a federal agent here. Some of you guys know him. Some of you guys don't. I'll introduce him in a minute. Let me just do a quick little roll call. Shout out to Don Solo. Shout out to everybody representing Chicago. Shout out to SD Walt. Shout out to all the MGM members. Shout out to Rich representing the Crib. Jonathan representing the Boogie Down. I get paid to wait. Shout out to Goat Logistics. Shout out to all the MGM members. Shout out to Doc. What's going on? Shout out to Dave. Who else we got? Shout out to Pippi. Shout out to the moderators in the building. Shout out to 608. Shout out to Andrew Green. Shout out to Isaiah. All right, so let's get straight to it. Not going to be here this long. Matter of fact, I don't even know if I'm going to leave this live stream up because it's going to be some good information, news that you can use, valuable information. Might put it in the members only. It depends on how I feel. It depends on how I feel after this live stream. Turn that off. That's that federal walkie-talkie. We don't want that private information to get out there. You might want to put it on pause for a second. But some of y'all know who we got in the building. We're not going to go into which agency, but the agency does work. Obviously, all these agencies work together. Does work with the Department of Transportation. You guys know Costas. Costas, how are you doing tonight? You want to go ahead and kind of introduce yourself to the people who don't know you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I think this is important, and my objective here today is to help all the carriers out there going through, especially Blitz Week, as they call it, for the first time. So I'm here to kind of give the basis of what has been told to me as of this morning. That's not typically listed in what people can kind of see online in the focuses. So I just kind of give people and your audience kind of the inside track of what not to do, what to stay away from, and certainly things to avoid.
Okay. All right. Let's get straight to it. I just got a few questions, and then I'll just let you cook with the information that people need. And then we'll just go ahead and go from there. So the first thing I want to know, well, I know, but for the people who don't know, this may be their first Blitz. I know a lot of people, when it comes to their first Blitz, they get very, very scared, very, very nervous, rightfully so. But what exactly is the purpose of DOT Blitz Week, and who initiates it?
So the technical term is the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance's International Road Check. It is not just in the United States. It is in Canada, the U.S., and in Mexico. And it's been put in place to enhance safety specific. Every year, there's specific kind of focuses that they tune in on based off what's happening in the industries, the responses that they've gotten from other U.S. data, officers themselves, violation reports, you name it. They come to a conclusion on what they kind of want the focus to be. And this year, that focus is going to be tires and hours of service. But I don't want to, how do I put it, make anybody think that that's only what they're focusing on, because that's not the case. Uh,
Okay.
and I'll be able to walk kind of you through what exactly what's going to happen, what they're looking for, and how to do your best if you should be on the road, so on and so forth.
Okay. Well, what are the main violations the agencies will be targeting? I'm saying agencies will be targeting during this year's inspection blitz, May 13th through the 15th.
So it's yeah, 13th, 14th, 15th, 3 days. They will be conducting essentially it's 15 inspections on average for every 1 minute across the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. So to give you specifics, that's a lot. Specifically in Illinois, where my focus is, there's 310 U.S. DOT officers along with state troopers along each one of them, and this information is not out there, but each one of them has to complete during that time frame 32 level 1 inspections. So if, for those people who don't know what a level 1 inspection, that is the highest echelon of inspections. It's 37 specific inspections that they do on your truck during that time, and the focus, like they said, is going to be tires and hours of service. But again, I don't want to let you fool that the main focus is going to be false logs. And what I mean by false logs is going to be false ELDs, logs with hours, and more specifically, everybody is being internally noted about personal conveyance. So you have to be really, really on top of all that stuff when it comes to being pulled over, going through a level 1 inspection. They're going to be quick. It's not going to be just sitting there for hours doing, because they got it, a whole slew of stuff, and they want to get as many inspections out there as possible. But when the focus is being told to us that yes, tires are a main issue, there's no visible air leaks, pressure points, anything in the gaps, your treads, make sure the tires are the same. That's one thing that's going to happen in normal inspections. That happens on others as well. The hours of service and the false logs is what's going to be the most important thing being tackled over these 3 days.
Okay. And you said each officer that's participating has a quota of 32 level 1 inspections over the course of the next 3 days?
Well, I want to be careful with saying quota
Okay.
because it's technically illegal, right? In Illinois,
Okay.
it'd be illegal for it to have a quota. However, that's the minimum. So they'll word it another way where that'd be the minimum amount of level 1 inspections that they want to see those officers go through during this 72-hour period.
Okay.
So that includes, and I want to again touch on the most important thing, and that's the personal conveyance. Because for those who don't know what personal conveyance is, that's using your commercial vehicle, for example, for personal reasons, going to a grocery store, going home to and from your loading area. The personal conveyance is going to be 100%. That's the specific wording in the memo that went out. That is 100% discretionary by the DOT officer. So a lot of people unfortunately use personal conveyance to, if they run out of time and hours, they will continue to go towards their destination just because they, are a half hour away from their dropping their load, and then they'll switch it over to personal conveyance and use that to finish out the day to get the load completed. Now, what they are specifically going to look for when they look at your personal conveyance, it doesn't matter if it's 5 minutes, it's 2 hours. What they will look for, if any portion of that personal conveyance goes towards the direction of your load, where it's going, where it's supposed to be dropped off, they will issue you hours of service violation. That's very, very important. So for those of you guys who might have not used the personal conveyance correctly, encourage everyone to start doing that properly. You know exactly what it's for. Don't take advantage of it. They will get you on this. If you're going the direction, you can't say you're looking for parking. That is not an acceptable personal conveyance use. So uh, only times maybe that'll be allowed is for a safety reason, even though people could say parking will be. It is, and I'll have to reiterate, 100% the discretion of the DOT officers, but they have a memo. If the personal conveyance is going in the direction of where your drop off is, they will issue a violation of hours of service.
All right. So you answered my third question without me asking. I was going to ask you: is there a national inspection focus this year? And you said tires and uh, personal conveyance, right? The logs, right?
Correct, correct.
All
And
right,
again, they say hours of service log, but the main focus is falsified logs.
all right, all right. What percentage of drivers typically fail inspection during Blitz week?
2023, and these are big numbers from all the inspections in 2023. It was approximately 19%. And don't quote me on the specific number, but it's very close to this. In 2024, that number increased to 23%. So 23% of all inspections, United States, Canada, and Mexico numbers are a little fudgy, but in the US, 23% of those carriers who were inspected were put out of service. And that's not the position you want to be in. They are anything they're looking for, they're going to get you on during this week. It's to make a statement. I can't stress that enough. It's to make a statement across the board of how any kind of, anyone questioning of what their purpose is, the FMCSA, the US dot officers, they're not doing their jobs for whatever reason, they are making a statement in these 72 hours. And let me express it, this 72 hours is very different because the bulk of the complaints coming in have been related to the hours of service and falsifying logs with certain carriers and people over their time. So if you have multiple profiles in your ELD, even if you have an ELD, if you have multiple of these and you try to switch it, they're going to know that. There's certain things being put in place that will know exactly, you know, if you have multiple profiles, are you switching it, where you're switching it, which direction you're heading, all that stuff. They're trained this time around. They're not going to let it go.
All right.
But again, I want to stress that's a big number, Mark.
Yeah.
That's an extremely big number. 23% of all inspections getting put out of service is quite remarkable.
Okay. Let me ask you this, because I know this is a question that everybody wants to know. How are the trucks selected for inspection? Is it random or based on certain triggers?
Uh, Triggers. So in this specific Blitz week, the more they could do, the better. So if they have the personnel, they're going to be inspecting everybody. Whether or not it's a level 1 inspection remains to be seen. No matter what, at every inspection, the hours of service is going to be checked. That's not, I would even go as far and say that the tires might not be checked. The first thing they're going to do, besides checking your license, CDL, insurance, making sure everything's proper there, making sure your markings are correct. The level 1 is 37 points, right? But
Mhm.
they don't have to necessarily go through all of them to be able to go through the number of inspections that they're looking to do. So, but at every inspection, the hours of service, especially, they'll be checking for false logs.
Okay.
But the trucks, to answer your question, excuse me, is what they will look for. And based off my experiences, in less than a year, I've been along. Uh, my background as kind of the federal investigator, kind of targeting where this freight fraud is coming from. I've been on 614 inspections with US dot officers. What they look for, what the computer will tell them to automatically come in for inspection, and then what is a human being saying, yes, pull this driver in. If you are driving a box truck, you will be pulled in for an inspection. I hate to say it, but they will do that. If your truck is dirty from the outside, if you have a US dot taped on, one side or not, anything looks sloppy, out of place, box trucks will be pulled over. Rent a trucks, 26-foot box trucks that are Enterprise, Penske, you name it, Ryder, they will be pulled over for inspection. That's a pretty much automatic, from what we are being told. You'll also come in with the semis, older trucks, might get passes. To be quite honest with you, it's the newer ones that don't have the greatest score or not having the CSA score, you know, of what level they're looking for, they're going to be pulled in. Now, whether or not it's a level 1, level 2, or level 3, that remains to be seen, but that is going to be solely based on personnel and how much people they have on site to be able to handle those inspections. Illinois is going to be a big state. I won't be surprised if Illinois has more than 10. It wouldn't surprise me, excuse me, if Illinois has more than 10,000 inspections in these 72 hours.
Let me ask you something about Illinois, since that's our state. I know I asked you privately earlier, but will the ICC be in on that this blitz this week?
You know what? You and I have our opinions on the ICC. I'm not going to say them publicly, but I wouldn't be surprised, to be quite honest with you, that they would be involved or in one way or another. But I will tell you this: if you are home based in Illinois and you don't have a ICC number and you're not registered with them, that's going to be a violation, and they're well aware of that. So just kind of a heads up, Illinois, you need that ICC. There's a couple other states that have their own: Texas, Kentucky, California. I don't know how strict they're going to be, but I can almost guarantee you the ICC is going to be in one way or another. It may not be with personnel, but they will be involved, and that's for monetary purposes.
All right. All right, we got a question from the chat. It's a super chat, so I'll ask it. It's from
Mm-hmm.
Dave. He says, "How far are they going to track the ELDs? Like the whole month, or the 7 day, or from the beginning?"
That's a fantastic question. So if they give you that option, now this was not discussed in the memo, uh, you have the right to email them up to a certain amount, 7, 8 days of your history, based off to make sure your hours are in check. Now, because they're looking for fraud, they
Mhm.
can make you insert a USB and download it. And when I say download it, they're going to download everything. So they might not even give you that option. Now, there's a lot of back and forth of what they're allowed to do and what not to do.
Mhm.
Uh, in this specific case, you are entitled to email them upon request, provide them. But if I were you guys, I would recommend that be polite. Do not record, say you're recording. Don't do any of that, because it's almost a guarantee going to be a harder inspection if you do that. They're going to be put on the spot. But do what the officer says. If you've been running clean, everything's in order, you did your best to keep it, let them download your logs. It's only going to make you better when it comes to this, because it's going to improve your score. If you have something questionable or you're not sure on, I'm going to tell you right now, don't fucking drive. Just don't do it in these 3 days.
Hmm. What documents should drivers have ready during a roadside inspection? And should is it and I'm asking this question for a reason. What documents should drivers have, and is it okay if they're digital, or should they have them on paper?
Again, another great question. You can do, for example, a medical card digital, but the way that I've seen DOT officers inspect, the more time you're fumbling around in your phone is the more time that they have to look around your vehicle. Have everything in a binder. And if you're driving over the next few days, and you should have this in the future, just have it in a binder like you're supposed to. I can't tell you how important that binder is. That includes everything from your medical card, your insurance, your logs, and there's a whole slew of other documents related to that. Also, make sure you have paper logs, blank paper logs. You're required to have that. Even if you have an ELD, in case those go down, you're required to have paper logs. If you're organized, have tabs, spend a few hours tonight, get it all together, have it with you. You hand the officer your binder, and you're not letting them, oh, he's fiddling around with his phone, I'm going to be looking around. And remember, there's certain rules in place that allow the US dot officer to look in your vehicle. And a lot of people don't believe it. I don't agree with it, but it is what it is. They can look in your sleeper. They can make sure there's rules about linens even in your sleeper. All that kind of things are going to be scrutinized to the T. They're going to look in your vehicles, clean it up, make sure you're clean. Do not have anything in your dash. No papers, no binders, no nothing. You cannot have that. That is a violation. Don't have mirrors cracked. Don't have your windshield cracked. Have your fluids filled. All this kind of stuff. In another way, it could be good for everyone to kind of brush up on things, but um, like I said, they'll be looking for everything. And the less time you spend with them, the better. Have it in a binder, have them hand it over. They'll check it. If they pull you into the garage to do a level one, it is what it is. They'll check your brakes, they'll check all that kind of stuff. But I don't think that's going to be a primary focus because they don't have the manpower and the machines to do it. They're just going to be doing level one, probably complete it, believe it or not, in I would say 10, 15 minutes at most. And then they'll either put you out of service or send you on your way.
All right. Anything else that you want to talk about that I might have not asked you that's equipment and vehicle related before we move on to? I want to go into technology next, and then I want to jump into the language barriers towards the
Yeah.
end. Anything
Okay.
else you want
So
to talk
in
about
terms
equipment and
of
vehicle related?
like it's the computer's going to be very aggressive. Obviously, that's the one that whether there's a pre-pass or not, it's going to say come in, come out. Whatever you do, for goodness sake, do not drive past the weigh station if you're asked to come in. Okay, that is a big, big no-no, especially now. And I promise you, there'll be state troopers in every state looking for that. If that happens, you are going to get a ticket. No excuses. That's a memorandum on there. No excuse for not coming into a weigh station. Remember, in terms of vehicles, I know cargo vans under 10,000 pounds are not considered commercial vehicles. However, if you drive any sort of hazmat, doesn't matter what your vehicle weighs, that is considered a commercial vehicle and you're subject to that same level one, all levels of inspection if you carry hazmat. Don't get confused on what hazmat is either. Great gentleman in the Discord brought up earlier, if you are carrying pails of paint, specifically solvent paint from Home Depot to in-state destination, that is a hazmat vehicle. That is considered a commercial vehicle. I would not be surprised if they started going after some of that kind of thing, if they have the resources. So paints, aerosols, all that stuff is hazmat. No matter if you were in a little Honda Civic, if you're carrying hazmat, any size, that is considered a hazmat vehicle, and you're subject to those inspections.
Anything else? I want to jump into technology real quick.
Sure. Again, I mentioned box trucks. Keep your truck clean as best as possible, inside and out. I promise you, it goes a long way. Uh, they're not going to profile the drivers. A lot of people think they do. They don't. They just know that some of the box trucks are really kind of called out. Rent trucks, 100% will be pulled in.
All right, simple question. A lot of people don't know it. A lot of people are concerned about it. Can a driver be fined for not knowing how to operate the ELD system?
Yes. Yes. Not knowing is not an excuse. Same kind of with any law or regulation. Ignorance is not an excuse. It's a violation.
All right. How are ELDs checked during these stops? Do agents request a digital file or just look at the screen?
So it's very officer dependent. Another great question. We touched on it briefly, but in many scenarios, the officer will say, okay, here's the email address, and you email them logs for a specific time period. The indication that I saw, even though it's a little iffy on the requirements to do so, they're looking for false logs. So they're going to be downloading everything. If you deny them that, it is your right, but I think that's just going to create more problems, and they're going to look for stuff, unfortunately. So it's either email to them directly, the officer will provide you a central email, or they can plug in on like a USB stick or drive. When you do that, when it is plugged into the ELD, because they're required to have that plug-in, it'll download everything. When I mean everything, it'll download everything.
So hopefully, Dave, that further answers your question. I know it seems like you're pretty scared to drive this week, so you might want to stay at home. Let's get into the language barrier thing, since this is what
And Mark, can
recently
I
was.
just touch base on that real quick on the
Sure, go
being
ahead.
scared to drive? I listen,
Sure, go ahead.
you know, my job specifically, I don't like, it is what it is. A lot of people just don't are good and clean. They just don't want to deal with the headache because it is a headache. It takes away from your time and service. But I would highly suggest, I wish we got to this conversation maybe a little sooner, but use this as an opportunity to clean your operations up, if that makes any sense. I don't recommend people being scared to drive. There's an uptick in rates right now. It's because, on average, 14 to 16% of the capacity goes out of the market this week uh, because they just are afraid or don't want to deal with it or have been running nefariously. So, I'm not in that camp. I suggest you clean your stuff up, get yourself organized, and use this as the catalyst to kind of do that.
All right. All right, let's jump into the language thing. This is recently a hot topic of discussion. What are the federal rules regarding English proficiency for CDL holders? I know Trump, signed that executive order a few weeks ago, but will that affect, will is that in place for the next 3 days?
As far as I know, it's only the state of Arkansas. I know for certain, but I do not know about Oklahoma. In it is not in place across the board. There's a 60-day from his executive order. There's a 60-day.
Mhm,
There was when he announced it.
mhm.
They gave him 60 days to enact that, remove that memorandum and enact that proficiency.
So let me ask you this. I know it's supposed to start in 60 days from when he signed it. I think it's June. I forget whatever the exact date was. But knowing
I know
that
the
these
question.
officers, yeah, knowing that, are what are these officers? Is it going to be situational, depending on the officer? Can they do it?
So here, I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish,
No,
and you touch on a great point.
you know where I'm going with it. So you
So
can just answer
here's
it.
where it's across the board, and this is the confusion. If the driver there is no, how do I put this? U.S. state officers, from the ones I spoke to recently, they have no obligation to be able to provide a translating app for you at all. If you cannot communicate at all with the USD officer, that's a reason for violation. Not necessarily for the proficiency, but there's zero communication. It's completely different if they can't read or write. You could still, whether or not, have a conversation or not. If there is zero communication, they could deem it unsafe and give you a violation for it. Whether that holds up or not, I think at this point in time, from the DOT officers I had spoken to personally, not a ton, but the ones I worked with, if they can't communicate at all and there's no back and forth whatsoever, they'll put you out of service. If you can communicate a little bit, maybe can't read something because that rule is not enacted, they might not want to deal with it, and they'll let you go. They'll issue a warning, you know. And I have to let everyone know, warnings do affect your scores. So it's not just a warning, okay, I'm in the clear, but uh, the language barrier, if there's zero communication, even with the rules upcoming in place, can still be reason for out of service simply by saying unsafe. That's it.
So the going the extra mile, the DOT officer that might have went the extra mile and pulled out Google Translator 6 months ago may not be so, you know, it may not put forth that extra effort tomorrow, so to speak.
Mark, it's a great question, and I don't have an answer for it. I really don't.
So
I
that
don't
so
know because I haven't necessarily I've witnessed broken English, but I've not witnessed anything where the driver is completely incapable of having a a conversation. I've never seen an app be used. Um, so I don't know how the officers are going to respond to that. I do
Okay.
know what I just mentioned, that they can put you out of service simply by saying unsafe. That's allowed.
Okay. So, because my next question was, what's going to happen if they cannot? But we pretty much, if they just cannot read, speak, just someone is just completely no habla español, just nothing. Like, I know 6 months ago the officer probably would have went the extra mile, but I guess that would be based on officer per officer how they want to deal with it. All right, so we'll just move on.
You look at the
Um,
constraints when it comes to that. You're constrained with time, and they do, again, not a quota, but they do have to deliver each officer 32 level 1 inspections, 37 points in each one of those inspections. That's a lot of time. If someone's not being able to communicate, I don't think they're at this point in stage across the U.S.
mhm.
Uh, I can't say for every state, but I don't think they're going to want to deal with it, and I think they'll be put out of service.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know,
if I was an officer, knowing that, and I got this, I know you can't say quota, but I gotta, perform so many over the next 3 days, and I have to meet this minimum. Let's say, I think that would be just an easy one that I can add to my list to get closer to my goal. So if I
right?
was an officer, I would, out of service, you did what I'm saying. But okay, all right, we get it. Um, are there I was going to so limit you've dealt with limited English. So do you think a person who has limited English, I know there's some people in here, one is very vocal right now, he's scared to death. Uh uh his image, I guess, is reading and writing, and his English is kind of limited. Are there going to be any exceptions or waivers for drivers who like they're kind of on the borderline? They're on the borderline.
So
They
there's
got a little.
two different kinds when it comes to that. So when you're face to face with the driver, they're inherently nervous, and it's understandably so. Some aren't at all. Some are perfectly comfortable, and but they're like, "Bring it on." Some
Mm,
people, I don't recommend start recording. Don't do that either, because you're just going to be scrutinized a lot harder. In terms of the, there's been drivers who I've witnessed who can speak English essentially perfect, but
mhm,
they cannot read or write. If they gave them a little postcard with a statement on it, that's not going to happen, by the way, this time around. But they might say, read a sign or this. Do you understand this? They'll be able to communicate English fine. They might not be able to write or read it, but they do know the road signs. And that's something that's up to the discretion of the DOT officer. But I could almost guarantee you know that level of comfort, and you could tell if the driver is capable or not. Uh, you know, Not everybody can read, just being honest with you, but they understand road signs, symbols, could speak English just fine. We've dealt with many of those, and many of those are Americans, not just foreigners. So the language barriers, there's some that have a very, very heavy, thick accent, but could speak very well and understand most of it. uh, you know, Again, this is going to be under in terms of the language stuff, it'll be under the discretion of the DOT officer. I really
all
don't
right.
think it's going to be a focus at all, this one. Right now, the focus, because so many complaints of fraud have come in, this is the falsifying of hours of service, specifically when it comes to personal conveyance.
Okay. All right. All right. Let's get to some practical advice. Uh, I mean, it's less than 24 hours now. So what's the best way a driver can prepare for an inspection? Uh, at now there's a lot of people who is just are just nervous, scared to death. There's a lot of new entrants. This will be their first blitz. What would you advise someone who's new? This is their first week, blitz week, to prepare going over the next 3 days.
I would be 100% honest with you and tell you, you can go to the 37 levels of inspection on level one. And what I mean, now there's 112 levels of points they look at, but the level one's considered 37 points or inspection points they look for. You can Google that. You could see what's included in that, and you could watch some even YouTube videos. There's some very smart, knowledgeable uh, individuals who have gone through that. Will tell you what to look for. Some former DOT officers will tell you what they're looking for. You know, but if you are nervous or scared, I only can implore you to use that energy to be able to get your shit in order. Get the binder
Mhm.
together, get all your paperwork together. Don't keep digital images on your phone. Another big thing. Um, and while I've given so many warnings before and not issued any violations when I probably should have, the one that I don't budge on is insurance or not insured. That is the one thing um, that could be easily, if you're on government property or a bonded facility, inspections will happen at airports. Don't think they won't. Um, if your insurance isn't in place, the proper insurance, especially if you're interstate, um, have all that shit in order because you can. I don't know if they will with the volume that's happening. If it's an airport, they will. They will impound your vehicle if you have no insurance. But if you're on the side of the road, I don't think they're necessarily going to impound it, but they will write you out of service. They will write you a pretty hefty violation for that, and you shouldn't be driving without the proper insurance. So that's another thing that's always on any level of inspection. The first thing, one of the first things besides your driver's license, your identity, making sure that you have the proper insurance in place
What
when it comes to that.
what are red flags that make inspectors likely to push it, push it to the
Um,
limit
are you talking about on the road about your vehicle or while you're pulled over? Because it's all different.
while you're pulled over?
Number one, recording, making it public that you're recording. People know that there's inward facing dash cams. If you want to turn your dash cam in, fine. You don't have to publicly announce it. But if you do, officers hate it. They understand it, but they hate it. You're going to be looked at with a magnifying glass even harder than you would during a blitz. I promise you that. Because the last thing any officer wants is to be have something go public, have done something wrong because they could be held accountable for it and be used as an example. So I promise you, if you are recording, you make it public. Oh, I'm recording this just for YouTube purpose or whatever the case may be. I don't care if it's a legit reason. They are going to criticize everything about your vehicle and you, the driver, because they're not going to be caught in that situation where they don't want to be made an example of. They will make an example out of you, especially if you're doing something wrong. Even if you think you have 100%, you're in compliance with everything, perfect running machine, all that stuff, do not announce that you're recording. If you record, make your dash cam face inward and call it a day. Don't make it public. That's
What
another
about
thing.
if
Dirty trucks is another thing. Huge, huge thing. Garbage in the vehicle, papers on the front, cracks in your windshield, all that kind of stuff. No fluids while you're stopped. Especially with the tires, don't have different tires on the same axle, with different treads. You know, have everything, pristine, nice and clean. Use this as an excuse to get your stuff in order. And believe it or not, it's not supposed to be a thing. Hygiene. If your vehicle stinks, you stink. It's they're gonna look at it more.
would you give a person who's driving an older truck different advice than a person that's driving a newer truck? And if so, what would that be? Preparing for Blitz week.
For an older truck, listen, the same inspection rules apply. The only difference is if I got to look at it's changed like 3 times. But if you have paper logs, you're going to be looked at 100 times more with scrutiny, and they're going to be double checking, and they might not even give you the results of that on the older trucks. But from my experience, the older truck drivers, some may have an attitude, some might not, but they've been around. The U.S. dot officers know they've been around. They don't get looked at as hard as newer drivers. They just don't.
Mhm. All right. Anything you want to say? I'm pretty much asked all my questions that I had written down. Anything you want to say going forward as far
Yeah,
as
and I'll mention it again. Listen, I'm in the business of fighting freight fraud, and with that comes safety. This is a safety issue. However, the specific points and the focus of falsifying hours of service, uh, a lot of you guys who are following the industry know a lot of bad accidents, especially happened as of late, but they've been ticking up ever since 2016. Whether you want to correlate that to certain events, fine. Uh, I look at the data, I look at people's behaviors, and I try to find exactly, you know, what positive can come out of this. And what I tell you, don't be afraid of Blitz Week. You can get great rates when it comes to it, but use this to get your shit in order. Your binder, your truck, your maintenance, whatever you got to do, uh, get it in order, because you're going to feel a lot better once all your stuff is in order and you pass an inspection, whether you deal with one or not. Um, Knowing that you've gotten your stuff together, and this is all readily available information. So again, don't be afraid of Blitz Week. If you've been falsifying logs and stuff like that, stop doing it. That's all I could tell you. Because there are things in play right now that are happening behind the scenes, that whether you get caught at Blitz Week or not, they're coming. They're coming for that kind of stuff really hard on the back end.
all right. Anything else you want to say? I'll take 2 questions and then I'll divert all the other questions for you to the
Sure. And
Discord.
I'll pop in the Discord. I got a good long drive ahead of me, so I'll pop in, and if people have questions, I can answer them as well
All right.
in there.
So I'll take 2 questions here and then any other questions you want for him. I'm gonna revert those to the Discord after the completion of this live stream. First question is first come, first served too. Can you get stopped multiple times during Blitz week?
Yes. Yes. However, these things are pretty law. I mean, it's pretty. The systems are, you know, they should be. They're supposed to be speaking with each other, with an exception of certain states, like California does not communicate, but most states do. And then there's some in Kentucky, I don't know, for some reason, but you can be pulled over multiple times. There's no reason why you're not. But in the computer, if you have an inspection, say the first day, and say you pass with flying colors, you're most likely not going to be pulled over again unless you're doing something, you know, that causes you to be pulled over. The system will update. That's the way it's designed.
Okay. All right. Second question, we'll do 3 and then we'll
It's a
refer
great
everything
question, by
else.
the way.
We'll do 3 and then we'll refer everything else to the Discord. How much can the fines rack up to?
Whew. Depends. I don't know. It could give you, listen, the out of service is going to come with obviously the opportunity costs and your time out, not being able to operate, along with some pretty hefty fines starting at 500 to 1,000. Uh, Anything to do with marijuana, narcotics, drugs, alcohol, that's going to be $1,000 fine. But pretty much, you know, warnings typically don't come with fines, even if you do get that. But they'll range from anywhere from a minor 250 to 500, all the way up to 1,000. I think the max I've seen personally is 1,000 on a first offense.
Okay.
but I got to double check that, so don't quote me on it.
All right.
But
What is
there's the penalties of being out of service and then getting your car impounded for no insurance on a bonded property. That's going to be a lot worse than the money.
okay? T wants to know what is PC used for.
PC stands for personal conveyance, and in trucking, that is using your truck for personal reasons. For example, uh, and thank you for bringing that up, because in order to use PC, you have to be off duty. That is the most important thing. You got to have it off duty on your log, and that is say you are done for the day, you dropped off your load, you're out of time, but you're at the receiver, for example. Now you want to go to your hotel or a grocery store or to get dinner, wherever, or go home for that matter with your truck. That's personal conveyance. And I'll stress again, this is up to the DOT officer's discretion. If, and the memo states this morning, if your personal conveyance, whether legitimate or not, and you can always fight these things, of course, so there's a process to do so. But if you're going and your personal conveyance is in the same direction where your load is dropping off, that is going to be a violation. If you're empty and you are doing personal conveyance, that is not a violation. But I can tell you from my experiences, personal convenience, about 80% of the time is used to extend their time, and that's why they're cracking down on it.
All right. I said three, but we're gonna take one more because this one,
Sure,
we gotta
sure.
take care of the people from the crib, low end to no end. Shout out to Horseman. What's going on? What if you have a rental truck? If you fail, is that on the driver or the rental company?
So remember, and a lot of impounded vehicles happen because when someone rents I'm going to use the example Enterprise, they rent a 26-foot box truck and believe that the insurance that Enterprise has on the vehicle is the insurance required to run interstate loads. That is not the case. You still need to have your own insurance. Federal minimum for interstate on a 26 footer is going to be 750,000. In the liability category, the cargo things is going to range about 100,000. That's not a requirement, but the liability portion of it is 750,000. Many require a million and above. You still have to have that insurance. Your liability and your MC number, if you're crossing state lines, needs to be, you have to have what's called the authority. And the authority is your MC number. You can look up anyone's MC number on Safer, the government website. It'll say whether they have insurance in place or not. But a lot of people believe, or they will tell officers that they believe that, enterprise insurance covers this, which it does not. They're covering their own insurance, which is the collision insurance and the general liability. It has nothing to do with what's required to actually carry freight across state lines. So
Right.
that I promise you, Retta trucks, enterprise 26 footers, you still have to have, and a lot of people use paper when it comes to that. You can't just have an enterprise rent a truck running loads without what's required is your US dot number on there. It needs to be on there. The MC number, guys, is not required to be on any motor carrier. Okay, it's just the US dot. It has to be on both sides, left and right. Um, so you got to tape it on that rented truck. They will be pulling over rented trucks. That's going to be a number one target.
All right. Well, one more local person. So I gotta
Yep.
I gotta I gotta show a little favor. You know how we do with the favoritism. You dig what I'm saying? How can they tell if a truck has a deleted def system?
uh, well, it's going to be a physical inspection for the most part. You're going to look under the truck. It's going to be cut out. Generally, it's louder. If it's on the road, if it's a newer vehicle that's required to have a DES system, it's generally going to be having some kind of smoke coming out. Most of the times it doesn't, but you just have to look under the truck and know what you're looking at. Um, in my 614 inspections, never had that issue. So another great question. Uh, They might. It's a part of the inspection, so they might for trucks, newer trucks, and for that matter. Yeah, it's a great question. I'm gonna look that up when we jump off here and go on the Discord. I'll find some more information about it.
All right. Anything you want to say in parting before we go over into the Discord as far as the live stream?
Thank you. I wanted to get this out there to help the carriers as much as possible. I don't always agree with some of the regulations. I fought in many battles and continue to fight to change the hours of service rules. We'll continue to do so. Has been a little bit of traction. I don't think it's ever going to go away, but we are fighting for carriers' rights because I've seen where the problems lie when it comes to fraud and how carriers, specifically single owner ops or owner operators that have less than three trucks that represent 90 to 93% of the entire truck fleet that's out here in this country. I'm on your side and I want to help. And I talk about it a lot, especially in the Discord. I'd love kind of passing along the knowledge to kind of not necessarily, I hate using the word educate, but just to pass on the information that I experience on the road with officers and what we're seeing on the fraud front of it. So anything I can do to help. So I appreciate you having me on.
All right. That concludes. We'll go over to the Discord. Well, he'll answer some additional questions for individuals who wanted, to ask their questions.
Yeah. And I'll look up the DEF system when I jump off here because I'm super curious about it. So,
all right, guys. Appreciate you. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
All right.